West Ham win again. There's only 5 points between 10th and 2nd. City have smashed Arne Slot's Liverpool, and Bournemouth's brilliant run has been ended by Villa. Welcome to another episode of More of a Six, where tonight I'm joined by Charlie and Matt like normal. And we've also got a very exciting guest on, Alex, also known as Up the Cherries on socials. We're definitely going to be talking a lot about Bournemouth and their season, and then also just touching on the normal Premier League games as always. Obviously, we had Palace Brighton this weekend, but to be honest, in weird circumstances, the less said about that one, the better. Anyway, we're going to start, because we've got Alex here, with Bournemouth's game. Unfortunately, it would have been nicer to have him on in slightly better circumstances. Where are we? Iraola's side have been on a right roll this season, so the result at Villa Park certainly came as a shock. Emiliano Buendia opened the scoring with a sumptuous free kick before Amadou Onana struck from range to double the Villa lead. Semenyo missed from the penalty spot before Villa scored a third and fourth through Ross Barkley and Donyell Marlon. The win was Villa's 8th in their last 10 games. So, Alex, what went wrong today for Bournemouth, and where do you see your season going from here?
I think everything. We were just appalling from top to bottom today. Like, we had a few chances, but we just couldn't finish. Semenyo missed a penalty as well at 2-0. I think if that goal went in, maybe more of a opening game. But just everything. In the first half, we couldn't string two passes at the same time. Like, the first half, I think that really killed us. They scored 2 in the first half, and we were just all over the shop. We couldn't do anything, basically. It was probably the worst performance that I've seen us put in like, in a good few games, because we've been great so far. But just everything today, I think we just couldn't pass the ball. It's just the simple stuff. It's awful. I think it's a tough one to take, especially we lost last week against Man City. That's 2 losses in a row now. But I think we'll kick on a little bit. I think it's just we've been good at the start of the season. That's 2 losses in a row. We've got West Ham at home next week after the international break, who've been pretty good recently, but I think we'll get 3 points there. So I'm hoping if we get 3 points there, we can get back on track. So I should be all right.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you say, I mean, you guys will be doing really well this season. And I think the beauty really of the Premier League this year is how congested it is. I mean, I said in the intro, there's only 3 or 5 points, between 10th and 2nd. I mean, it's very, very tight. A win for you, for example, with other teams dropping points, could send you as high as 3rd. A win for us could send us as high as 3rd as well, depending on how results go. It's just a crazy season, and it's so tight. And I think, you mentioned you've got West Ham coming up that do seem to be on a bit of a roll at the minute. What are kind of the aspirations? Obviously, we've got Palace, Brighton, Spurs viewpoints. We don't normally get kind of input and the viewpoint from a fan of the likes of Bournemouth. So what are the aspirations for you guys this season?
See, before these last 2 games, I would have said potential European football, but again, it's way too early to say anything. I don't think we're going to get a run again. I think that's completely out of the card. So I'll probably just say a top 10 again, like last season. Like, if we put some more runs together, like some more wins in a row over the next few months, then potentially by Christmas could talk about European football like we did last season. But I just think getting a top 10 for 2 years in a row, getting a top 10 would be quite good for a small club like us. And I think it would just show the league that we can repeat what we did last season, even though we've lost a lot of key players like Kirkes, House and Zabani. So I think just trying to repeat last year's success, getting a top 10 finish, I think for me would be a bit of a success.
No, for sure. And I think we always say, especially me, Charlie and Matt, that, there's no shame in just being like a solid Premier League club. I think you can kind of get lost in the whole glitz and glamour of Europe and stuff like that. And ultimately, Brighton have had it, Palace have had it, but you guys are doing really well. You faded a little bit at the end of last season, but you started well. And to be honest, with how tight the league is this season, I really think it's anyone's for the taking. Charles, we'll come to you quickly to touch on Villa, because as I said, 8 wins in their last 10. They're absolutely smashing it at the minute, aren't they?
Well, Villa Park's a horrible place to go. I feel like everybody knows that. So, Alex, I wouldn't beat yourself up too much. I think you've had 2 pretty hard fixtures in a row there, City and then them. But yeah, I feel like, there was a bit of doubt at the start of the season, wasn't there, about how they started. It took them a while to score that first goal. But I feel like it's just inevitable when Emery's in charge of this Villa side that they always, make it out of those hard spells. And they've had some great quality coming back over the last few weeks. Buendia's probably in his best spell of form that he's had at the club since he joined. Obviously, he was great before at Norwich. And Amadou Onana come back. Obviously, he's one of them players. He's such a great player, but how often is he there? Do you know what I mean? So, but he, again, I thought was really good today. He scored a nice goal. I watched the highlights. I was at the Palace games. I didn't see the full game. But yeah, Villa are a great side, to be honest. And they're on a really good run at the moment. And I think that this is kind of back to the Villa that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned Buendia. I mean, he's been excellent. He keeps scoring some really nice goals as well. He's always been a player that has had that kind of ability to just pop up with a great goal. And again, with Villa, you'd think with the start they had to the season and then, a few weeks of consistency and suddenly they're sixth. And again, we're going to keep saying it because it is the tightest I've ever seen a Premier League, even 11 game weeks in. I mean, this is crazy, to be genuinely realistic, that even Newcastle in 14th, if they get 2 wins on the bounce, they're suddenly kind of pushing for the European spaces. And at the minute, with the coefficient rankings I saw over the weekend, I should say, England are set to have 9 teams in Europe next season, which is absolutely massive. So that could really give the opportunity for the likes of Bournemouth, Brentford, Palace, Brighton to qualify through the league as well. Let's move on then from Villa to Spurs, Manchester United, because Spurs looked to have won all 3 points in this game when Richarlison scored in the 91st minute, but they couldn't hang on and they conceded in the 96th minute when Matthias de Ligt was left unmarked at the back post. The point sees United continue what has been a decent start to this season, but for Spurs, despite sitting fifth, they are not pleasing the fans. And in my script, it says, are they, Kyle? Because I thought Kyle was going to be with us and I thought we could get a bit of a nibble from him. But he's not. So, Matt, I'm going to come to you instead. I want to ask you more about... So Spurs, they're fifth. They're doing well compared to last season. What is it that's making them, so basically fed up with what's going on?
I think Frank's football, first of all, is just better suited to the Man Cities, to the teams that want to dominate the ball. And with Spurs and Spurs fans, they want to be an attacking side. Frank's football's never been based around that, but it's made them definitely defensively solid. I mean, you could argue that their home form hasn't been very good at all, but overall, I think fifth. You ask a Spurs fan if they'd be happy with fifth under Frank first season, they'd say absolutely. I think a big issue as well is just they've got some dinosaurs in midfield. I mean, don't get me wrong, Bentancur, Palhinha, both excellent players, but they're not players, they're not the profiles that someone like Xavi Simons needs. They're not progressive. They're not really line breakers. Like, you get Basuma in that team, for example. You get Sarr again, who I thought was decent from the little bit I saw of that game. Then that will get the best out of Xavi Simons. And I think Richarlison as well, and even Kolo Muani. I've never really rated Kolo Muani at all. But Richarlison on the left was a strange decision. He was, pants.
Yeah, I agree. I think the squad selection is probably... also, for me, I think, I think they're where they are because they're really good away from home. And when you're performing badly at home, you're going to upset your home fans. I think they're being a little bit dramatic, though. I think, especially considering where they were last year and how awful of a season they had, I think that they should probably be a bit more positive about what's going on. And you could probably say the same for Manchester United, although things do actually seem to be looking up for the Red Devils. Alex, so obviously Amarin's come in last year. He had a really poor start, but now kind of is starting to kind of get his kind of tactical system implemented on the squad. What do you make of United? And do you kind of think that they're slowly coming to, back to their best?
I think so, yeah. Obviously, their brand new signings they made, Matheus Cunha back from the injury, which is quite a big thing for them because he looked quite he looked pretty good when he first started there. They got Brian Mbeumo playing some great football. So I think it's just like their new signings are finally like all gelling together, and I feel like the team are starting to learn his style of football, and I think they're more willing to play for the team rather than just like in the past. Over the past season, you could say they're playing for themselves till they get goal by themselves. I think they're working as more of a team, and I think it is starting to pay off. And I know when he lost to Grimsby in the cup, everyone was saying, "Oh yeah, it's been an awful season," but I think that kind of overlooked how good, like compared to last season, they had quite a good start compared to the other United teams. So I think it's just I think the teams are just like the players are just gelling together, and I think they're just starting to play his actual style of the game.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think it's probably testament to how good of a man manager he is that he's kind of he's been able to go through a pretty rough patch in terms of results, but actually still keep the players on side. I think, Charles, we spoke about that, didn't we? and you were talking about, well, I can't remember exactly what you said. I think, what was the example? Was it Bayern Deer when you spoke about how he defended him? Was that last weekend when
Yeah,
you were
well, I
talking
just
about that?
yeah. I just think I think he clearly cares about the players, and also going back to something I said last week about the inevitability, about how it's kind of shifted in the last few weeks, hasn't it? I feel like before there was this inevitability that they bottle a game, or that they throw away a lead, or that they just couldn't seem to get results over the line, and we've seen it again this weekend, just like last weekend. They go a goal up, they then go behind, and even with that little time left, they still kind of just. It feels like they're going to get something out of the game. And they did again. And, they all count the same, a set piece again. But, I just feel like this United team, it's now 5 games without a loss, which is huge for them because, they've not been very great in the last few years and lost a lot of games. But, this inevitability that they just will get a result has kind of come back. And, yeah, that's just a really good sign for them, I think, because in the recent past even, it's kind of been the other way round, You feel like they're just going to throw away a lead or fail to go ahead.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think they've really, really gained that kind of inevitability back, as you touched on. Let's go to West Ham, actually, because Burnley did take the lead early at the London Stadium. And, that's kind of been the case for West Ham, even last week against Newcastle. They went behind and it looked like it was going to be kind of another loss. But they're starting to show a bit of spirit, really, aren't they? Goals from Callum Wilson, Thomas Souček and Kyle Walker-Peters were enough to see out the 3-2 win, despite Burnley scoring late through Josh Cullen. And it's West Ham's second win in a row in the league. And it actually takes them level on points with Burnley, and they're only in the relegation zone on goal difference. Nuno going in was an interesting appointment. And, they were desperate for change. But Matt, do you think that West Ham, they've definitely got the individuals and the talent to kind of get themselves out of this rut, but do you think that they can actually survive?
Yeah, I think once you gain some momentum, once you gain some results like they seem to be doing, and the performances, then it's only up from there. And I think with the appointment of Nuno, West Ham fans, they don't particularly care about what kind of football they play, what brand of football they play. They just want to see goals. They want to see results. Yeah, I think Nuno was a perfect fit, really. You look at the pragmatic football and the approach, which they wanted to change after getting rid of Moyes and then bringing in Lopetegui and sort of keeping that, but it's just a worse Moyes. Completely changing that, going with Potter and then sacking him, it's just a bit all over the gaff. But I think they'll find some stability now.
Yeah, no, for sure. To be honest, I don't think there's much to say about this game. I think it's probably the result you'd expect, maybe not the scoreline. But I think for me, West Ham should be winning that game. And I think, like you said, if they can find that stability, I think they'll be absolutely fine. We're going to run through a game quickly. We'll do Chelsea versus Wolves because, to be fair to them, Wolves did look to be, they look as good as gone. But when they visited Stamford Bridge on Saturday night, it was actually quite surprising to see quite a comfortable defensive display, especially in the first half. But the goals did start to flow after the break. Malo Gusto scored his first Chelsea goal before João Pedro and Pedro Neto added to the tally to Maresca's side all 3 points, a win which takes them third in the league. For Wolves, they've got obviously a new boss coming in Rob Edwards, who's jumped ship from high-flying championship side, Middlesbrough. Maybe a bit of heart overhead with that decision. He did play for Wolves for 10 years, I think. But he's going to have to perform some proper wizardry to keep them up. They're rock bottom, 2 points after 11 games, still no wins in the league. And I think, to be honest, they're as good as gone. No team's ever survived from a start as bad as this. We won't touch on them too much because we spoke about Wolves last weekend quite heavily. But I think it's fair to say that they'll be playing West Brom away next season. Let's jump to something that I think brought up quite an interesting talking point, which is Everton v Fulham. Fulham could well be sucked into somewhat of a relegation battle this season. Their squad is poor and they're struggling to produce performances worthy of earning points. A visit to the Hill Dickinson Stadium is a tough one for most teams. Everton have only lost once there, but a soulless performance from Marco Silva's men meant it was all too easy for Everton to win their 4th game of the season. Idrissa Gueye and Michael Keane were the scorers in this one. Fulham created 0 big chances. So, Charles, we'll go to you. Do you think that Fulham could slowly be dragged into a bit of a relegation battle, especially with the likes of West Ham winning?
Well, I said this last week. I feel like I kind of brought attention to the fact that it's kind of gone under the radar that they've been on a pretty terrible run of form. I mean, and they've kind of had a pretty bad start to the season. And I think definitely they could get sucked into it. I can't necessarily see them going down. Not under Marco Silva. I think he's just too good of a manager. I think their problem it lies in the quality of their players. The point I made last week about how many players from us 3 teams, now Alex is here. I mentioned Bournemouth last week as well when I was saying it. How many of our players could step into these, like a team in the Big Six and not look out of place at all? We've got a fair few each, I'd say. And when you look at that Fulham squad, I don't even see, maybe not even one that could step into like a properly good side in this league and not look out of place. And I think that's maybe where their issue is. And I feel like the longer it goes on, and it's just a side where their ground isn't really like a fortress. Like, you don't go away to Craven Cottage, you go, oh no, everyone hates going to Craven Cottage. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's I don't know, they could definitely get sucked into it. They definitely could. And West Ham, on the other hand, 2 wins at home in a row. It's great for morale. The fans are back the manager now. It's not looking good for Fulham at the moment. That's all I'll say.
I think you're right. The talent that we have in the squad, in our squad, in Bournemouth squad, in Brighton squad, can all kind of, as we've seen with all 3 of our squads, has kind of made the step up to kind of Champions League level clubs. And Fulham really just don't have any of that. And like you touched on, if West Ham are able to kind of make the London Stadium somewhat of a fortress, that would be brilliant. And you're right, you can't see Fulham doing that. Everton, though, Matt, they kind of seem to be doing quite well. Yes, only 13th, but again, with how tight it is, they're just 3 points off Bournemouth in 9th. Do you think they're kind of just going to have another kind of transitional season?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think the fact that they've finally found some stability after being in the relegation zone, relegation battle for years now, ever since pretty much after lockdown. I'd like to think they should be okay with that, but I think a lot of people, including myself, had them to even be top half, maybe even chasing Europe. So it's been a bit of an underwhelming season from my perspective, from what I expected from them. But I think overall they should be fairly happy so far.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on then. Let's get it out of the way. Let's talk about today's game at Selhurst Park. Where are we? When Palace meet Brighton, it is often a cagey affair, but the last 0-0 between the two sides came all the way back in 2019. A very, very tight game took place at Selhurst Park today, where both sides had little in terms of clear-cut chances. And the referee's performance was a point of contention, especially when he awarded Jorginho Rutter a penalty for one of the most blatant dives you will ever see. But to be honest, his entire performance throughout the game was so poor. There was the moment when I think Lerma and Van Heck had a little bit of a square up and there was nothing in it. Van Heck shoved him, Lerma went down, and then he booked both of them. It was just a bit ridiculous, to be honest. Char, you were both at the game, right? Let's go to Charlie first. For me, I mean, I was working the game for BBC Sussex. I could only listen to it, which was absolute hell. I love radio commentary, but I hate listening to it when it's my team. You can't get a good idea of what's going on for the most part, and it was just awful. But Charles, what did you make of it? The atmosphere sounded a little bit tense from across the radio.
Yeah, some great promo from you there for BBC Sussex, but honestly, it was a horrible game of football. I don't know if Matt agrees, but it was just like, it felt so stop-start. I feel like the ref had a terrible game for both sides. Like, I feel like genuinely any decision where he could have got it wrong, he did. And any decision where it's impossible to get wrong, he still did. For both sides, genuinely the worst refereeing performance I've seen in years at Selhurst. Neither team really looked like scoring. I think maybe we had the better chances. Brighton had a bit more of the ball. It was just a pretty nothing game. I found it incredibly boring. Mitchell was really good, I want to say, against Minter. And I feel like I've said it before, and I just don't know how he's not in and around, being mentioned for the England squad. Like, no one even thinks about him, but left back wise, he's right up there. He's so good. Yeah, you take it, I guess. Keeps it ticking. No hit to the confidence. 2-week break. Then we obviously come up against Wolves as soon as they've had a couple of weeks with a new manager. That's football. But yeah,
I don't think it'll
Just-
make any difference with Wolves.
it's pretty boring. Pretty boring.
Yeah, it's a shame. I was kind of hoping that we'd be able to come on here tonight and have a proper, exciting chat about it, but it just was not a very good game. Matt, you got any thoughts you want to share about how much of a dirty, cheating scumbag Jorginho Ritter is, or anything like that?
That was horrid. I thought, to be fair, at the time, we all thought it was actually a penalty, but you look back at the replay and Jesus Christ, that is genuinely one of the worst I've ever seen. But I think Charlie hit the nail on the head there. Referee, to be fair, from our perspective, I can't really remember much he did terribly for us anyway, or against us. But I did also say on Twitter that this is probably one of the highest quality games in terms of tactically, and just goes to show how, I want to say how far the two clubs have come, but just how far, I want to say the rivalry in a way, because we've been at this sort of good level for since 2022-ish. But yeah, just boring. I thought for us, Kadioglu, outstanding. Bleb was better today. Wharton, up against Wharton, I didn't think he had his best game. Wharton, I don't know if you'd agree with that, but Gomez was decent. Northwest, really. Minte, yes. Mitchell did well against him, but Minte was also dross. Completely awful today.
I agree with you about Kadioglu. I think Kadioglu is a very he might end up being your best player, to be honest. I think he's that good. I think he's such just ridiculous player.
He's definitely not rated enough.
No, for sure. And I think, we do have to give a shout out to 19-year-old JD Canvo, because stepping in for Mark Gay, and I mean, he was just absolutely magnificent, wasn't he? He is unbelievable. Rolls Royce, the definition of a Rolls Royce. Just such a good young player. And I think I said it on Twitter earlier. If when you're a club of our size, I think Bournemouth had done it really well, actually. When you're going to lose your best players, so you need to pre-plan and make sure you have the kind of next in line lined up. And the fact that we've got a player now who we've signed 2 years younger than Gay was when we signed him, and he just looks like perfect to step in now and be that Gay replacement long term. Let's go to Brentford Newcastle. Newcastle made light work of Athletic Club in midweek, but were unable to back it up with a win as their league form continued to falter. The Toon went a goal up through Harvey Barnes, but when Dan Burns saw red for a second bookable offence, Brentford turned up the pressure and were rewarded for their efforts. Kevin Schade equalised before an Igor Thiago brace won all 3 points for Keith Andrews' side. And Newcastle are now just 2 points above the drop. So, Alex, I'll come to you again. Is prioritising European football going to cause Newcastle issues in the league?
I mean, it could do, to be fair. I'm not too sure about their squad size. I heard quite a few Newcastle fans before the window started complaining about the size of their squad. I'm not too sure on their squad, so I'm not going to go on that. But I feel like it's hard when they're in the Champions League, and then you've also got the Premier League football as well. And for a club that isn't as big compared to the teams like City, United, it's always going to be hard to focus on getting far in the Champions League. I just think Newcastle realistically aren't going to win the Champions League. So I feel like they should, as much as they want to go far in the Champions League, they also need to try and think about the Premier League, because they want to qualify for European football next season as well, which they're not going to do by winning the Champions League. So they're going to have to try and get it through the actual league spot. So I think it is a tough one, because obviously as a club, you want to go far in Europe, but then also you want to qualify for it again the next season. But I think it's a bit of time, but I think they need to get their priorities sorted out in what they want to actually aim for this season. And I think it's going to be hard to get a good Premier League finish and a good European finish at the same time for Newcastle in the current state of things, especially how their season's gone so far.
Yeah, no, honestly, couldn't agree more. And I think the point you make about them, they're not going to win the Champions League is really important, because it is interesting that they're choosing to prioritise that so much, and it is clearly impacting their league form. Brentford, though, I mean, again, I think is it you that keeps reminding us that you didn't tip them to go down at the start of the year? I can't remember, but they are doing well. Talk to me, Igor Thiago. And by the way, quickly, after talking about Rutter, we have to mention Ouattara, because another shocking dive. There's been dives all over the place this week. Vinicius Jr. at Anfield, it's just been constant. But Brentford, Igor Thiago, What do you make of how they're getting on?
Well, I mean, I keep going back to it, and I hate to be the guy that says "I told you so," but at the start of the season, I think every other person on the podcast said that Brentford would struggle. Why have they brought in a set piece coach as their manager? All this, that, and the other. And I feel like Brentford are just such a smart football club. They're so well run. They don't make rash decisions. They recruit players well, and they did the same with the manager because they're such a pragmatic football team. Another goal today from a long throw. They just make it work. Do you know what I mean? They're one of them teams that they make it work. As much as last week against us, they were pretty terrible. Probably the worst team to come to sell us this season. Again, they've got result against the Newcastle side, who, like you said, kind of almost made me laugh. Made light work of Athletic Club, but then go to little old Brentford and get battered basically. But yeah, I think this Brentford team, they're pragmatic, and I feel like they maybe know that where they lack in quality, which they don't necessarily lack too much in quality, but where they do, they make up for it, but by getting goals where they can, little percentages, set pieces of throw-ins, that all of that. And yeah, I feel like he's doing really well for a manager that's not got much past experience in coaching of first team football. I mean, any sort of first team football, he's doing really well.
Yeah, for sure. Let's move on then. We're going to very quickly touch on Forest Leeds. Because as everybody knows, we don't really like Forest very much on this podcast. So we're not going to give them too much praise before we end up talking about what could end up being a very big weekend for the title race long term. Anyway, Leeds have proven to be a tricky customer for a few Premier League sides this season, and it appeared they might pile more pressure onto Forest when Nemecha fired the Whites ahead. However, Sangare levelled things up for Dyche's side before Gibbs White put the trees ahead, with Elliot Anderson scoring from the spot late on to round off what was a comfortable 3-1 win. It was a vital 3 points for Forest, it must be said, who needed to keep up with West Ham, and a win in their away visit to Anfield, however likely you think that is, after the international break, could actually lift them as high as 14th. For Leeds, a big missed opportunity to get a few points on the board against a side that has very much struggled at home this season. So, as we were saying earlier, it could well have been a massive weekend in the title race. And we'll start off with Sunderland, who have had a superb start to life in the top flight as they became the first team to breach Arsenal's defence in 8 games. They scored late to rescue a point through Brian Brobby, a very well-taken goal, which for some reason Arsenal fans wanted disallowed because the Arsenal defender had put his head into Brobby's foot. The draw means that Arsenal now only lead at the top by 4 points. So the question is, can they hang on to their lead over the next 7 months? For Sunderland, the point takes them into the international break in 4th place, having already accumulated more points than Southampton last season and just 3 points behind Ipswich's total for the entirety of last campaign too. And then, of course, today, as we record, we had Manchester City versus Liverpool. And after Arsenal dropped points, City had a golden chance to close the gap to the top of the table after Arsenal dropped the points, and they took it. Erling Haaland scored, as he always does. He also missed a penalty before Nico Gonzalez and Jeremy Doku secured a 3-0 win for Pep Guardiola's side, which takes them just 4 points shy of Arteta's side, as I said. And they're also levelling. It also levelled the sides up, on goal difference. For Liverpool, the result sees them drop to 8th. But the real question is, can City now really mount some pressure onto Arsenal and challenge them for the league title? Charlie, what do you think?
Yes, is the answer. Yes, Manchester City can. Manchester City are a very good football team, and I feel like this City is a much more exciting City than we've maybe seen in previous years, where they might pass a team to death and you'd be a bit like, God, kind of beat them by making them fall asleep. But this year, they're actually quite exciting, I think. And I feel like that, obviously Haaland it's inevitable. Like, we don't even need to mention the character that, he's missed a pen and he still ends up scoring. Like, that's just Haaland. Everyone knows that. But Jeremy Doku has, I think, gone under the radar this season. He's had such a good year, I think. And that goal was, wow, what a goal. And the assist as well. I love that he tried, in a week where we're talking about players diving, trying to win penalties, he tried so hard there to stay on his feet and get a shot off when he could have easily just gone down. And he got his reward in the end, didn't he? And they got the pen. I mean, no reward in the end. But as for Arsenal, I feel like Sunderland I feel like if any team was to end this Arsenal streak, in terms of winning, it was going to be the Sunderland team because they're so good at home. It's a horrible place to go. The atmosphere is great. They score a goal and they're on, like the fans are on you. I loved what they did with the advertising hoardings. I don't know if you guys saw this. They made the pitch smaller around the pitch more, so Arsenal couldn't do the long throws. And then when Labrie was asked about it, he was like, I think, what did he say? He said, "Oh, it must have been the wind." Which I think that's brilliant. This is it. It's not going to be as cut and dry as people think. I think this season, and City will be chasing them, and they won't stop. I think it's going to be a close one this year.
100%. Alex, instead of asking you if you think it could happen, because I think Charlie's right, the answer is yes. I want, at this point, 11 games in, I want you to tell me who's going to win the Premier League.
Oh, that's quite a harsh question.
Put you on the spot big time.
Right now, just
Right now, who do you think is going to win the Premier League?
I'm gonna say Arsenal. I'll say Arsenal just because of how good they've been this season. But it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a tight one. I think it could very much be Man City that win it, but I'm going to say Arsenal. I think they'll get the job done. Surely they've come second so many times. It cannot go on like that. Surely
it can, and it probably will. To be honest, I mean, I just think that
I'm glad someone
City
said
are
it.
I think City are so good. I just think they're so good, and I think they're really going to just creep up on Arsenal. Matt, I guess the other side of that coin is, one, can Sunderland win the league, and two, Liverpool. What is going on there? Because it needs to be studied. To be honest, Liverpool's downfall it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. I haven't really watched a huge amount of Liverpool, so I don't really know what's going on sort of tactically, structurally, but I do know that Arne Slot's system hasn't really been much of a typical footballing structure. It's quite free positionally. I think injuries to Isak, and I just think the whole signing of Isak has been a bit disastrous, especially when you have Ekitike. But on the flip side of the signings, to be honest, if you've watched Florian Wirtz, you will know he's actually been decent for Liverpool. Performance-wise, he's been pretty good, and he creates a lot. And I think he's been very unlucky not to get the numbers that 120 mil or whatever he was player desires and requires really to live up to expectation. But it's so obvious. The talent is so obviously there. He will be a success in the Premier League, whether it's in what system, in what position. It's obvious to me. It's the same with Xavi Simons, going off track a little bit, but you watch him Saturday, the little flicks and flares and whatever else he does is there. But anyway, probably a freshen up of their defence as well. Just Van Dijk, I saw that. What was it today? I think their disallowed goal, was it? One of their goals. I haven't seen the highlights, but where he's just stood there and doesn't do anything, deflects off him, goes in. And Konate should be good, but isn't this year at all. So they need a freshen up. They need Guehi, some would say.
Yeah, some might say, but I think he might be off to Real Madrid, to be honest. I think that's probably a good place to end it. As always, as we fucking have to do every week, apologies for the technical difficulties. It appears that when there's wind outside my flat, my Wi-Fi just decides that it can't hack it anymore. So that's 50 quid I'm spending a wellness every single bloody month. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and a big thanks to Alex for joining us. We'll definitely get you on again soon, hopefully when Bournemouth win. You'll be able to find links to all the boys' TikToks, Instagrams, Twitters, Tinders, whatever they want to send me. I'll put in the description of the videos. If you're listening, yeah, especially for Matt, that last bit, maybe Grinder actually, who knows. Anyway, if you're listening on Spotify, please follow and rate 5 stars. And if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, like, and comment. And we will see you potentially.
Unsubscribe, go away.
In midweek for another episode of Top Scorer. But for now, that's all from us. Thank you very much for listening. Bye-bye.